Hello, my name is David, and this is a making of video covering my recent animated short film, Immortal Machine. This is the first of what will be 3 making of videos. Today, we'll be covering the production of the film, the art, the themes, the story, and Autodale itself. Next week will be all about the mayor, his design, his backstory, and this awesome sculpture I made in preparation for the film. And the week after that, we'll finally be covering Autodale's Matriarch, after all these years. This project was a long time coming. Please enjoy. Autodale is an authoritarian dystopia. The citizens of the town live in an everlasting cycle. They are bred to live happy, short, suburban lives, idealising their lack of individuality, their efficiency, and their function. They work, they marry, raise replacements for themselves, and willingly march to their graves when their use is at an end. Autodale is a machine, and its citizens take great pride in becoming faceless and functional cogs in that machine. They know no other way of life, and most wouldn't have it any other way. This short film, Immortal Machine, follows the exceptional woman, a seemingly average Autodale citizen that begins to question her way of life and attempts to rebel. We see her first meeting with Autodale's elusive mayor, who almost perfectly embodies the rotting, decaying but undying abomination of flesh and metal that the town truly is, but likes to keep oh so secret under its happy, peaceful suburban exterior. She expects to be killed, but isn't. Instead, she is told the story of the city's formation, Autodale's forbidden fairy tale. A tale that we, as the audience, only see a glimpse of, but it manages to completely change the exceptional woman's perspective to the point where she even decides to assist in the town's function, becoming assimilated and forming the start of Autodale's hive mind of exceptional citizens. The story follows the exceptional woman, but it's not actually about her. It's about the mayor, it's about the matriarch, and it's about the town itself. What we are told of Autodale's forbidden fairy tale is that the world outside the city has withered away. The withering was a great sickness, a mass extinction that ravaged a once magical, fairy tale-like world. Even ethereal, godlike beings began to wilt and fall. A great inventor, moulded by this time of crumbling mortality and death, became obsessed with the function and possible immortality of his inventions, his machines. He captured a wilting goddess and through a series of unspeakable experiments and atrocities managed to keep her alive. Around this goddess, a tower was built, and a wall, and a town, the last of the human race in a changing world that's leaving them behind. As long as this life-giving beacon keeps breathing and stays healthy, so does the land around her. But this bubble of safety comes at a tremendous cost. The matriarch gives life to the people of the city around her, but also requires their lives in return. The people of Autodale really are just cogs in a gigantic machine, living and working and breeding and dying to feed the health of their town just for the next generation to live and work and breed and die. This cycle has gone on for thousands of years. Autodale truly is the great inventor's immortal machine. Immortal Machine is the 7th film in the Autodale animated series. The Autodale series started back in 2016 when I painted my Don't Feed the Freaks illustration. This project is getting pretty overwhelmingly large at this point. It's the most extensive and long-lasting artistic endeavour I've ever attempted. Please bear in mind that besides some voice actors and some music, it's all just me. And the Autodale series isn't just animated films either. It's hundreds, if not thousands, of drawings spanning multiple sketchbooks, a growing collection of clay sculpture maquettes, a bunch of paintings, and 7 animated films, each with their own environments and characters, 3D models, and their own drawings and everything. This Autodale project has spanned almost 5 years of my life at this point. It's been really hard. None of this is easy. There's a lot of good in here, there's a lot of bad. I'm not in love with all of it, but I can definitely say that I'm extremely proud of all of it. I've had the idea for this film for a very, very long time. What the Matriarch is, the Withering World, the Great Inventor, Autodale's history, and what the city does with the uglies, I've had answers for since Being Pretty was released. Hive and the Exceptional Women made their debut in No Monsters a few months later, so their stories are almost as old as well. All the backstory, the characters, the events, the reveals, everything that's revealed in Immortal Machine, I've had in my head for years and years. I've had to force myself to sit on these ideas, keep them all secret until the time came that I felt I was actually capable of taking on such an ambitious project and do it justice. Which I guess has finally come. This film has a very large cast of characters and creatures, perhaps the largest of any of my films. The cast includes the 2 most detailed character models I've ever created, the Mayor and the Matriarch, which I suppose comes as no real surprise. If they weren't the most detailed character models I'd ever created, I probably wouldn't be doing my job correctly. I must have spent like a whole week just painting the Matriarch's textures. Her in particular had to be extremely well detailed because she is so damn big. I would absolutely love to cover the Mayor and the Matriarch's design more here, but I have to save that for their own dedicated making of videos coming out in the next few weeks. The flashbacks to the Withering were a unique challenge, but one I was extremely willing to embrace. We've seen the post-Withering world where life has evolved to live in this new poisonous place in Don't Feed the Freaks, but here we see the Withering in full swing, as all the creatures and the people of the old world, this once magical, dark, fairy tale-like place, are slowly wilting away. I love the sickly look to everything here, the sepia filter and the beginnings of the type of surrealist imagery that Don't Feed the Freaks is totally full of. The handymen featured in these segments are a slightly different and more primitive model. This design actually reflects the old and rusty design seen in Don't Feed the Freaks for just that one moment, which in turn is based on this sculpture I made a couple years ago, which makes total canonical sense. It has been 3 years, but I was finally able to tie in that proto-handyman that I designed into an actual film, which I'm not gonna lie, is extremely satisfying. One final character I'd like to talk about here are the Helper Goblins, as my sketchbook seems to call them. These creatures were nearly cut from the film, as I felt that they didn't really affect the overall plot too much, and it's a lot of work to design and create a new character from scratch for just 10 seconds of screen time. I grew really fond of them though, and following on from my friendly shadow oven mitt philosophy, I felt I just had to put in that effort. I actually managed to design, 3D model and rig the little dudes in just 2 days, and I'm glad I did. I didn't think they affected the overall plot too much, but in retrospect, I don't think that's totally fair. They serve as foreshadowing as to what the exceptional women could become. They imply a lot of unanswered questions to Autodale's depths, adding more scope and mystery to the film. And I also just like the idea that the mayor's only company down here, besides the matriarch, are these animalistic, subservient builder minions. I always pictured the mayor as this Nosferatu monster Dracula type stuck in his castle, and these strange gargoyle minions just really suit that aesthetic to me. As for the purpose of these creatures, well, someone down here has to build and maintain all these spaces, and given the gigantic cavernous hollows under the town, it only made sense to me that those workers needed to be arboreal, climbing, spider-like goblins. This is something I don't really talk about much, but I feel I should. The sets and locations of this film. I found that a large variety of different locations seems to extend a film's difficulty far more than any other aspect of these animated short films. More so than characters, more so than effects, a large amount of varied locations is a nightmare to design and draw given the specific art style and process I use to create these films. The characters I only have to make once, and if I've correctly rigged them to do everything they're supposed to do, I can use one character model throughout a whole film. But the backdrops, I have to create a brand new image every time I want a new camera angle. This is made exponentially harder when new locations begin to stack up higher and higher. I think this film has the largest amount of locations of any film I've ever made, and I don't think I've ever put as much effort into the set design as I did on this project either. All of these places I wanted to give individual personality. Rooms that are important to the mayor have this grandiose Art Deco aesthetic under the biomechanical horror on the surface. Places he frequents, his throne room, the elevators, and the tank of human mush, have this Art Deco aesthetic, an aesthetic Hive's courtroom does not share at all. I made a real effort as well to keep all of these locations alive. They're almost never static. Whether that be with constant thunder and lightning in the heart of the city, the churning gears and cogs sticking out from the walls, the floating pieces of rock and debris in the withering world, or the slow pulsing undulating gore in the human mush tank. I'm quite proud of how alive these locations feel. It bears repeating, when animating this stuff you get none of this for free, it all has to be done, it all has to be made. But I really do feel it was worth all of the effort I had to put in. I think it looks fantastic. In case it hasn't become obvious yet, this was a tremendously difficult subject matter to base an animated short film around. We have endless cavernous hollows, constant thunder and lightning, robots, goblins, and gangly Nosferatu monster and a gigantic biomechanical goddess in an underground Art Deco dungeon palace. These things aren't easy to pull off from an artistic or technical standpoint. If I made this film back in 2017 when I originally wanted to, or 2018 or even 2019 when my animation and artistic skill was at a far more amateurish level, this film would have massively suffered for it. Comparing the 2D lifeless static image of the matriarch from being pretty with the fully animated and fully rigged, living, breathing matriarch from Immortal Machine, I think really speaks for itself. 2017, 2021. Helping me out with this film was the returning Adrian Cox, who plays the exceptional woman / Hive. Adrian has actually played a lot more characters in the series than you might No, almost as much as me, I'm pretty sure.
Sweetie, there are no monsters here.
She played the mother in No Monsters, she provided the Foley for the two little girl characters in Friendly Shadow and Immortal Machine, she plays the exceptional woman and therefore every single piece of Hive, and on top of that, she even provided all of the horrible zombie groaning ghostly wail sounds that the Matriarch makes, which I think turned out incredible.
It was all necessary.
Great work, as always. An absolute wonderful person to work with. Thank you very much. Also returning to the series were Rayshon Thompson and Cameron Moody, who provided the score. They also created the score for Friendly Shadow, but personally, I think this score far surpasses it. The score that they conjured, I feel, really elevates the film, giving everything so much more scope and gravitas. This feels big, it all feels ancient, and it feels twisted.
You must understand. She is all that keeps us safe. A beacon of the old world.
I seriously recommend that you check these two guys out because their work is fantastic. Link to the soundtrack is in the description below. This film was inspired by a mix of sources, mostly from artistic design perspectives. One fairly obvious example is Guillermo del Toro with the dark fairy tale influence. This man's films have been an influence on pretty much everything I've ever made. Another likely obvious example is H.R. Giger with his surreal biomechanical horror nightmarish artistic style. The Matriarch's design is almost a complete and utter rip-off of Giger's work, and I have no issue admitting that. Another massive influence on this project were the works of H.P. Lovecraft. I think I've audiobooked my way through every single story he's ever written maybe 5 times now. It is my go-to background animation noise. The Autodale series shares quite a bit in common with the Cthulhu mythos as well, with ancient deities, great plagues, unknowable monsters, and deep, dark, monstrous secrets hiding underneath seemingly regular places. A perhaps surprising and quite recent inspiration for this series has been the work of Clive Barker. His stories, books and films usually revolve around sex, horror, bodily mutilation, fantasy and a cheeky bit of BDSM. But what I want to talk about specifically, don't worry, is the Tortured Souls toy line. Back in 2001, McFarlane Toys and Clive Barker teamed up to create 12 figurines, each a unique, twisted, creative, horrific design from deep within the recesses of sex fiend Clivey Boy Barker's head, and they are all wonderful. These models were a huge artistic influence on Hive's design back when I was working on Friendly Shadow, and by extension, the design of the mayor in this film as well.
It's been a long time since someone came to me for a story. Okay, this here is one of my favourites, the story of the Rat and the Hound, a tale of great and terrible times.
Those of you who follow my work will probably have noticed the plot similarities between this film and my Merry Madness and Scary and Strange films. Both feature a tired old man living in the centre of a grey suburban town, housing dark secrets in its depths. Both also have their wifeys on life support in their basements. Merry Madness is indeed part of the Autodale universe. I couldn't really reveal it until I started to discuss the Withering, but here it is. I know that there's a long-running theory in my fanbase that all my films are connected. They really aren't. Cyborg dads fighting dinosaur robots and melancholic, introspective, apocalypse wandering just really aren't thematically compatible. But the Merry Madness films and the Autodale films are very much connected.
The men and women pushed away them monsters. They rid of their terrible, but in doing so, they abandoned their great, and buildings once delightfully wobbly became square and grey.
Merry Madness does not take place in Autodale itself. And besides the suburban aesthetic and the dark fairy tale influence, the films themselves are still very, again, thematically different. They are very separate, as Merry Madness takes place in a completely different town a long time ago, when the Withering was only just starting to occur. Merry Madness is literally all about the early effects of the Withering.
Nights once filled with merry madness, laughter and argument now fell silent and still, which made for stories the rat didn't care to tell.
I've had the story for Immortal Machine in my Autodale headcanon for pretty much as long as the series has existed, and when I created Merry Madness, I knew that eventually, be it in a year or 2 years or whatever, Autodale's story would finally be revealed, and the very similar events of Merry Madness were supposed to foreshadow those events. As you see in Don't Feed the Freaks, every single town has fallen, many even attempting what the Great Inventor succeeded in doing, but all failing. The town from Merry Madness is just another one of those failed towns. So, those of you hungry for some more Autodale, there are 2 more films in the series that you may have not seen yet available right now. I'll make a playlist and put it in the description or something. Sit back, everybody. It's story time with Davy Wavy. This is part 1, The History of Autodale. A long time ago, the world was quite a magical place. A place where creatures and people of all cultures and backgrounds mixed together. This led to arguments and conflicts, but also love and laughter. A rich world that was hostile and welcoming and alive. Pure merry madness. Things started to change, however. A sickness started to spread. The soil would poison and the people would wither. Entire cultures of strange peoples disappeared as towns would rot and fall. A great inventor was born into this withering world. He became obsessed with cheating this inevitable sickness to preserve what little he could of his world. All around the inventor grew sick, but not his machines. These contraptions of metal and purpose would never slow, well kept, likely to outlive their mortal creators. These idols of pure function were free of flesh, free of the complications of illness and conscience. The lonesome inventor became rather fond of his immortal friends. Beings seldom seen in times of plenty came from their hidings to gasp in the stale air. Most impressive of these were the titanic, wandering creatures known as the monarchs, rarely seen, always passive, and completely unknown. History seemed to depict the monarchs as ancient, changing things that reflected the people and the land around them, in their shape, in their colour, and in their health. Constantly evolving, these immortal creatures, personifications of the earth itself in times like these, were the first to wither and the first to fall. Action had to be taken. The inventor and his machines, desperate to learn the secret of the Titan's seeming immortality, they ensnared a monarch. It was bound not to dissect, not to kill, but to understand and to be preserved. The inventor and the matriarch were fused, tethered together in mind and well-being, and as the years passed through countless unspeakable atrocities, the monarch's health improved, as did the land around her. But sacrifices had to be made to keep the creature at bay. Life requires life, and in her shadow a new city was born. A people, faceless and functional, living only to keep their city running. They would live and work and breed and die to feed the health of their home, just for the next generation to live and work and breed and die. This was a life with purpose, they were told. Endless cogs, wearing down and being replaced. The matriarch's appearance quickly twisted to fit her new kingdom, an unnatural but beautiful monstrosity, an averse marriage of man and god, flesh and metal. The people of the town forgot about the withering world beyond. They forgot about the monarchs, and in time they even forgot about the very inventor that founded their home, their people, and their very beliefs. In a dying world, a whole thriving city turned life support for a goddess that in turn keeps her people alive, a never-ending cycle, ever churning in an undying pocket of the old world. This was the great inventor's Immortal Machine.
Storytime with Davy Wavy will be continued next week in Maaaaan Making Of with Part 2.
Right. This is the third time I have rewritten and recorded this section. I have no idea how to put this into words besides just saying it, so here it is. Working on this film was an utterly horrible experience. I have been through projects that were difficult, like Friendly Shadow, and I've been through projects that made me miserable, like Neon Daddy. Immortal Machine officially takes the cake for the most difficult and most miserable, which is one hell of a combo. This film was a total mess from the very start. It began life as two separate 5-minute films. I started animating both of them, hated both of them, merged them together, and it just kept expanding and mutating from there. 5 minutes turned to 8 minutes to 10 minutes to 12, and I just had to stop. I don't think this film is terrible. It's definitely not terrible. But I rewrote and added and removed so much that when I watch this film, all I can see are the seams, where I stitched something in here and had to remove something important there. I think it's gorgeous. I love the designs, I love the world, I love the cinematography. I think all of that's some of my best. I am very proud of this film, but I went into this film thinking it was the best idea I had ever had, an idea that I've had stuck in the back of my brain for years and years, and what I made just isn't that. I could talk for a million years about how disappointed with this film I am, and I know I've been quite vague with my issues with it, but that's because after rewriting this segment twice already, I've realised that that's not important, and it's not what I should be talking about right now. There's a bigger problem. These films have become too big and too stressful. It has been just over a year since I uploaded my animated short film Model Citizen, and the moment that this YouTube channel started to pay like a real life job. And with that, a pressure to push myself further and further and take this all a whole lot more seriously. With the pandemic keeping us all indoors and this newfound imaginary responsibility I can't seem to ignore, I have been working a lot. I've been working pretty much all day, every single day for 6 months on a project that I hate. This has been my life. And before that, I was working on a project all day, every day as well. And before that, I was doing the same. I mean, hell, I woke up today around midnight, immediately started working, and it's now 11 in the morning. And I've been working for 11 hours straight, right? And I'll be working for 5 more, and then I'll go to bed. I did this yesterday, I did this all last week, and I'll do it tomorrow. I've been doing this for 12 months now, and I need to stop. I am working too hard, I am working too much, and I am my own boss, so this shouldn't be a problem at all. I have no idea what's happened. I will be taking a break from Autodale for a little while. This series is just far too big for me to continue with it at the moment. A break should be good as well, and should give me some time to think about the next chapter in the series and make sure that a project like this doesn't ever happen again. On a cheerier note, there were a couple of weeks in December where I had to wait for my composers to make the score. I had very little work to do. And in my spare time I found myself researching, modelling, texturing, rigging and animating some dinosaurs. Just casually, no real reason, no film in mind, just because I wanted to, and it was wonderful. What you're seeing right now is the start of what will likely be my next short film. A short film that I'm taking my time with, and that I'm really, really enjoying as well. If you want to support me or read any of the sketchbooks I've been showing off in this video, you can. High-resolution photographs of the entire book have just been uploaded to my Patreon page. The whole Autodale series of sketchbooks is on there, every sculpture, every painting, all of it. On top of every animation sketchbook I've ever made, actually. Please consider supporting me if you want. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go for a walk and feed a duck or something. Bye. Never mind, I'm back. I forgot the last bit. Special thanks to all my top Patreon supporters on screen right now. Hopefully superimposed over a duck. I'm sorry I'm not reading out all the names anymore. If I want to create shorter videos, which I desperately need to start doing, I just can't. There are too many names, it takes too long, which is the absolute best problem in the world to have. So again, seriously, thank you all so much. Bye guys. For real this time.